Mercedes could lose up to 20 horsepower before the first race even starts. Because after explosive evidence surfaced in Bahrain testing, engine manufacturers are reportedly preparing to sign a last-minute clarification to the 2026 engine rules. And if that document is approved, Mercedes' current power unit could become illegal overnight. This is not speculation. Rival teams submitted technical dossiers. The FIA began drafting an emergency directive. And the controversy centers on one number: 16:1. The maximum compression ratio allowed. But evidence suggests Mercedes may have engineered a thermal expansion solution that changes once the engine is hot. Cold inspection. Legal. Race conditions. Potentially far more aggressive. That difference could mean 15 to 20 extra horsepower. Which explains the brutal acceleration data seen on day 1. But here is the bombshell. If the rule wording shifts to require compliance under all operating conditions, Mercedes cannot redesign the engine in time. They would have to detune, lose power, and start the season weakened. So now the real question is simple. Did Mercedes build the most innovative engine on the grid? Or build their entire advantage on a loophole that is about to disappear? Because what happens in the next few days could completely reshape the championship before a single point is scored. Subscribe now, because this situation is escalating fast, and the next announcement could change everything. Let us understand why this is so serious. Because this is not just about a clever engineering trick. It is about timing, legality, and the possibility of a rule change days before the season begins. The current regulation states the maximum compression ratio is 16:1. That measurement, crucially, is defined at ambient temperature. That wording matters. Because engines are inspected cold. In the garage. Before the race. If Mercedes designed pistons using a thermally reactive alloy, as rivals allege, then the geometry of the combustion chamber could change once the engine reaches full operating temperature. Cold. Legal. Hot. Potentially more aggressive. And that is where the estimated 15 to 20 horsepower advantage comes from. In modern Formula 1, that is massive. That is the difference between defending easily on the straights and being vulnerable. That is the difference between running a higher downforce setup without losing top speed. That is championship-level performance. But here is the part Mercedes never emphasized publicly. Higher effective compression increases cylinder pressure. Higher pressure increases mechanical stress. On pistons. On connecting rods. On crankshafts. On the high-pressure fuel system. On the MGU-K harvesting energy under braking. And on day 2, the engine failed after only a handful of laps. Smoke. Red flag. Session lost. Initial indications pointed to either a fuel system issue or a hybrid component failure. If you are operating close to the edge of combustion pressure limits, reliability margins shrink quickly. And reliability in testing is not optional. Every lap builds understanding. Tire degradation. Fuel loads. Energy deployment patterns. Mercedes lost critical mileage while Ferrari and McLaren continued running race simulations. That gap in understanding compounds. Now add the political dimension. The FIA does not want a scenario where the race winner is disqualified hours later due to a compression interpretation dispute. That is why they are reportedly moving quickly. If the wording changes to require compliance under all operating conditions, the current Mercedes configuration would need immediate adjustment. And immediate adjustment means detuning. Reducing effective compression. Sacrificing horsepower. Possibly losing the very advantage that defined their early testing pace. There are rumors of a conventional engine specification waiting in reserve. Safer. Slower. If Mercedes switches to that version, they admit the edge is gone. If they defend the current design and lose the political battle, the consequences are worse. Because redesigning a homologated combustion chamber in February is nearly impossible. So this is not just technical. It is strategic. Defend and risk sanction. Adapt and lose performance. And while this unfolds, George Russell has already admitted the team is behind in mileage and understanding. The chassis appears sensitive in fast corners. The rear unstable in certain wind conditions. If the engine advantage disappears, those weaknesses become exposed. That is why this moment feels like a turning point. Mercedes may have engineered something brilliant. A solution inside the wording. A breakthrough in combustion efficiency. But breakthroughs inside gray areas rarely remain gray for long. Once rivals protest. Once the FIA drafts clarification. Once manufacturers negotiate new language. The margin vanishes. And when the margin vanishes, only adaptability remains. Right now, Mercedes is not just fighting for horsepower. They are fighting for the legality of the philosophy behind their entire power unit. And the next sentence written into that rulebook could define whether they begin the season as the team with the strongest engine on the grid, or as the team forced to step back before race 1 even begins. Now here is where the pressure becomes unbearable. Because this is no longer just about an engine concept. It is about whether Mercedes built their entire 2026 project around an advantage that might disappear in a single meeting. Think about the scale of that. Engine architecture is not a small adjustment. It defines cooling layouts, gearbox integration, energy deployment strategies, fuel consumption targets, even aerodynamic philosophy. If your power unit delivers 15 to 20 extra horsepower, you design the rest of the car around that strength. You run slightly more downforce. You accept a bit more drag. You compensate for rear instability with straight-line dominance. But if that power suddenly vanishes because of a rule clarification, the entire balance collapses. And that is the real danger. The W17 has already shown signs of rear instability in fast corners. Antonelli described it as unpredictable in certain wind conditions. Russell admitted they are behind in understanding and mileage. If you remove the engine advantage from that equation, you are left with a car that is not fully sorted, and no longer the fastest in a straight line. That is a brutal position to start a season. Now consider the political chess game unfolding. If engine manufacturers truly are close to agreeing on a clarified interpretation, that means consensus is forming. And consensus rarely favors the outlier. Mercedes could find themselves isolated, forced to either comply immediately or escalate legally. Escalation creates headlines. Headlines create pressure. Pressure creates distraction. And distraction costs performance. Meanwhile, Ferrari and McLaren are calm, running long simulations, understanding tire degradation curves, building correlation between wind tunnel and track. Mercedes is rebuilding engines and preparing legal arguments. That shift in focus is dangerous. Because Formula One development is exponential. Early knowledge compounds into mid-season upgrades. If Mercedes loses testing mileage and engine clarity now, that deficit grows over time. There is also the reliability layer. If the engine was operating near its structural threshold to extract higher effective compression, detuning might solve legality, but create new mapping inconsistencies. Power delivery may feel different. Hybrid harvesting balance may shift. Drivers must adapt again. Antonelli, already under enormous pressure replacing a 7-time champion, cannot afford instability in both machinery and regulation. And here is the part that truly defines this moment. If the FIA issues clarification before race 1, Mercedes has no room to negotiate performance on track. They must accept it, adapt instantly, and hope reliability improves under a new configuration. If the FIA delays clarification, the season begins under protest threat. Win a race, and rivals challenge it. Lose a race, and the political storm continues anyway. There is no peaceful scenario. Either path carries consequence. So when we say Mercedes is in serious trouble, it is not exaggeration. It is structural. Their competitive edge may be built on an interpretation that is evaporating. Their reliability is already under scrutiny. Their mileage deficit is growing. And the championship has not even begun. The next few days will decide whether Mercedes enters the season as the team that pushed innovation to the limit, or the team that pushed one step too far. And in Formula One, the difference is measured not just in horsepower, but in championships.